where lust for a whole life and nothing but less makes people jump out of a comfortable pond into an unknown ocean. Welcome to that journey between the East and the West. Who says Rolling Stones don't gather moss? Hello, everyone. I am Meenu Gupta, your host for the day, and I'm delighted to have you join me every week as amazing people share their incredible and inspiring life stories of straddling continents. Thank you. Dear listeners, a city is only smart if the people who live there or visit it feel well informed and in good hands. I am not the person who made that statement. The person who made that statement is our guest for the day. He is Ashok Alexander Sridharan. Wikipedia describes him as a German politician of Indian and German ancestry who served as Lord Mayor of Bonn from 2015 to 2020 and as a member of Christian Democratic Union of Germany. Ashok, that's how Wikipedia puts you as. And a very warm welcome. From what
Thank
I
you very much,
understand,
Meenu.
before I go on to you again for the listeners, I believe from what I read and the little bit of research my team did, that you put Bonn on the international map of global sustainability, mobility, and digitalization. And in fact, to that extent, that during that period, I believe it was 2019, Smart City Index put Bonn as number 7 nationwide and number 1 in Northwest Falia state. So that's a wonderful achievement. Compliments during that period, I understand. Again, a very warm welcome. Thank you for sparing some time because you bring, as I mentioned before, a wealth of experiences from the East and the West. I understand that you are a practicing lawyer right now. What do you consider yourself first? A lawyer or a politician or both come together? Which one?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And I've been in political offices from 1996 to 2020. So this part of my life is past. Now I'm a lawyer since January 21, and I'm practicing in a law firm with offices in Bonn, Berlin, and Leipzig. And I myself am responsible within our law firm for all the issues regarding authorities, public authorities, but also in the field of sustainability.
That's interesting. And if I strip all the labels away, like your lawyer label, the politician, and the rest of the labels that life gives us, even the name. So if I strip away all the labels, who are you as a person?
Well, I'm a very family minded person with the really privilege to have parents from Germany. My mother comes from Bonn. My mother's family is living in Bonn since the 16th century, so it's a very old Bonn family. And my father came from Chennai to Bonn because he worked for the Indian embassy here in Bonn, met my mother, and stayed here. So I had the privilege not only to grow up bilingual, English and German, but also to get to know two cultures, which is India from my father's side and Germany from my mother's side. Unfortunately, I did not yet had the opportunity to live in India for a longer time, but I could very well imagine to go there to spend a couple of years over there. And because we've just been there last year with my parents, with my wife, with my brothers, to meet the family over there and to celebrate my father's birthday over there. And India always was and still is and always will be a beautiful country. And many of my relatives are still living in Chennai. And I could very well imagine also to stay there for a while.
And when was the first time you visited?
I was just 6 months old. I can't remember this, but I've been to India really many times. When I was still living with my parents, we used to go to India at least once, but most of the times twice a year to visit our family and to do some traveling around as well. Also sightseeing, of course, and but first and foremost, visiting the family.
So you were born in Bonn or in Germany, as I understand. So how was it like? As you mentioned, your father is from India and your mother is from Germany. Do share with us how you landed up where you are right now. A little bit of the journey.
It was always a privilege, and it was always an advantage to have, first of all, brown skin, but secondly, to be able to also communicate in the English language and the German language, which was an advantage because we were living here in Bonn for the first years of my life. Then we shifted to Frankfurt, and Bonn as well as Frankfurt are very international cities. In Bonn, which is the former capital of the German Federal Republic, we had many, many international people living over here. And it's still, there are living people from more than 180 nations here in our city of Bonn, although it's a very small city compared to other well-known cities worldwide. Bonn has only 330,000 inhabitants. But due to the fact that Bonn was not only the city where our constitution, the Deutsche Grundgesetz, was elaborated, but also the city where the government had its headquarters here in Germany. Till 1999, then it shifted to Berlin. We had always a very international city, and there were no disadvantages at all for me. And I also was, because of my mother's family, who's living here in Bonn. I was always part of the city of Bonn and of the people living here. I went to a German school. I went to a German kindergarten before I went to school. I studied law at a German university. So I always felt German with Indian roots.
And there it is. In one line, he sums up his identity, a German with Indian roots. That statement itself throws up a world of information of how he wears multiple cultures in one persona. So how did that story begin? Let's find out. And is there a story of how your mother and father met?
It's a classical in the dancing school. They met in a dancing school. And obviously fell in love with each other. And fortunately, they are still there and they are still married. And I'm very happy to visit my father today, to visit my parents today afternoon.
And they are also living in Germany.
They are living in Bonn as well.
And your father, because you were born here, so that puts a different aura, let me put it that way. A sense, a feeling is very different. But your father comes from India. How does he feel about he's here then? He's also a German citizen then.
He is indeed a German citizen. I've been an Indian citizen when I was born, but I got the German citizenship in 1974, as my brothers did. I do have two younger brothers, and all of us do have a German citizenship, but I do also have an OCI card, the Overseas Citizens of India, and so does my wife, so that we are able to travel also without any visa or something to India and stay there as long as we want, which is very important for me.
Which is, yes, very practical. We also did the same. But when you visit India, because you were born and brought up here, though you have your father is of Indian origin, though, besides sightseeing, etc., is there any pull of the roots that you feel? Is it from a very intellectual level one is able to take in sights and information and so on? I'm just curious because I'm assuming the next generation can also feel that. So I'm curious. This is happening more and more now. It was not so much that time. Now, with porous borders, digitalization, the world is becoming, as one of my guests said, a global village. How does it feel?
It feels very good because I'm really in a very close contact to my cousins in India, and it's not sightseeing. When we are going to India, the most important thing is to meet our family, and that's why we spend quite a lot of time together with our family in India, in Chennai, and that's the most important thing for me, but also for my wife and our sons. When we go to India, we want to see the family. Otherwise, it won't be the journey we would like to do. Because coming back to India is coming back to the family, to the Indian part of the family. And although we are living in Germany, we do feel at home in India as well.
That's nice. And your children as well.
Yes, our sons as well. Our sons are all grown up, and our oldest son went to India with his partner last year, with his girlfriend, and because he wanted to show her where my father comes from and where his roots also come from. And therefore, they went to India and spent there a couple of weeks, and of course, also spent time with our family over there. And they were overwhelmed because it's the second generation. I think it's more or less understandable that I, as a son of a person who was born in India and who was brought up in India, do have a more or less strong relationship to not only to the country but also to my family over there. But our sons, they have not been so often to India as I have been, and so it is special, and it really makes me very happy that they are still trying to keep the contact, and they're keeping the contact to India and to our Indian family.
And it must have been for them. And I totally understand. So you are the direct link, and then that's a third link that they have. So that must have been probably a bit overwhelming.
For our Indian family, it was overwhelming, but also for our son and his girlfriend, it was overwhelming to just enjoy the hospitality of Indians. They are fantastic hosts, and to just realize that they were integrated into the Indian family. Although, especially the girlfriend of our son has never been to India before.
I think the hospitality of the Indian culture is fairly different from, let's say, West Europe.
Yes, it is. It is indeed. But this is also an advantage. I've learned many things from my Indian side. I hope that hospitality is one of the things I've learned from India. And we do love to host our guests. And we also, for Christmas, for Mother's Day, for special events, we always have the whole family with us because I think these are the Indian roots, and we are always happy to spend time not only with our Indian family but also with our German family. My father has seven sisters and brothers, and my mother has six sisters and brothers. So it's a huge family.
Besides the hospitality, what are the couple of other things that you might mention that you have learned from the Indian side of yourself? Let me put it this way.
The Indians are not at all narrow minded because they are very tolerant regarding other religions, regarding other nations. And I think this is something I have learned from the Indian part of the family, from my father, but also from my mother, of course. And we tried to also teach this to our children that tolerance is very, very important. And I think especially Indians are very tolerant regarding religion, regarding other nations, regarding many other things. That's why I'm a bit sad that the actual situation in India is a bit different than I've learned it when I was young, because it's very Hinduistic now.
Yeah, the influence, as you might say, because I think one of the most important defining things about India was the secularism and the tolerance and I would say, diversity. In fact, the other day, and this is really interesting, I think it was a couple of years back, I mentioned diversity and inclusion and intercultural competence to a member of in my Indian team, a young fellow, next generation, and he started laughing. He burst out laughing, and I was wondering, why is he laughing? Because I was saying, in India also the students should be trained. He started laughing. And he said, but we are born in a diverse country. Everybody is different. There are that many religions. We don't even think about it. It is our way of life. And then I thought back. It took me a minute to understand that. And I realized he was right. For example, I grew up in terms of not only religion. We would sup with the Muslims, the Hindus, the Christians. We would celebrate all religions even now. not only the religion, it's a diversity of languages and subclasses of people, and it's all there, it's right in your face all the time. So much so that you don't even think about it because you're part of it. That puts you in a very special position, actually, because you are embracing diversity and inclusion in your life, in your personal life all the time. Because, in my opinion, when there's a relationship like this where you have multiple ancestry and the marriages and children, there's diversity and inclusion being practiced at a very deep level at home, close quarters. So, does that not put you in a special position of understanding tolerance to that level and sharing that?
Yes, it does. And therefore, it was one of the main things I wanted to do, and I did when I was in office, to strengthen the relationship between the people who were born here in Bonn and living here for centuries, and the ones who came to Bonn to live here, to work here. And as I mentioned, there are people from more than 180 nations who are working for DHL, for the United Nations, for Telecom, for IT companies here in Germany. And there is quite a big Indian community as well here in Bonn. Not as big as in Cologne, but there are some Indian associations here in Bonn. There are Indian festivals here in Bonn. And I think this is very important to just don't forget your own culture and look for other cultures as well.
In your opinion, that always made me a bit curious. Germany has this interesting system called the integration process for people who come in. So, what would you define as the overlying feature of this process?
I think the who come to Germany to work here is the one thing, because they are integrated via their jobs and their families and kindergarten, schools, and so on and so forth. But the refugees who came to Germany from 2015 onwards, they had nothing. They really had nothing. They had no job, they had no school, no kindergarten, nothing. And these people do also want to live here. And if you want to live somewhere, you have to be welcomed with open arms. And that's what we tried to do here in Bonn, to give them a very warm welcome, especially to the refugees from Syria, for example, who came here in 2015, 2016, which were thousands of people who came to Bonn, and they had to be accommodated. They had to go to kindergarten, to school, they had to find jobs. And I think integration is really working best if the people who are living here for many years help those people who are coming here as refugees or as people who work here, if they give them a hand and say and ask, may I help you? Can I do something for you? Can I teach you our language? Can I help you with the authorities? And that's what the Bonn population did. There were so many volunteers helping the refugees, helping the people from abroad to find their way here, to find accommodation, to find school, to learn the language, to learn something about our culture, to just understand how Germans are. And on the other side, it is very important for Germans to learn how the people who came from abroad are. And that's why there are some international festivals here in Bonn where everyone is offering the typical food of his country, for example, and the culture of their countries. And I think that's very important because we can all learn from each other. Nothing is perfect in just one country, but there are some perfect things in India. There might be some perfect things in Germany as well. And so we can learn from each other. And this is only possible if we get into contact to each other.
And that's a very actually interesting point that you made about when you mentioned the last part about the integration, because generally the focus is on making sure that the people or refugees who come in, they understand the workings of the host country where they are. But is there, beyond the festivals that you mentioned, is there something in Germany where the people in Germany are also given so forth so-called trainings to understand the people who are coming in, just as an curiosity?
No, not in general, but there are opportunities, of course, with in school and university. You can learn something about other countries, but it's not in general so that there are special events for Germans to learn something about other cultures. Not from the cities or from the governments of the states or of the federal government. But nevertheless, there are many opportunities. For example, the Muslim community here in Bonn, they invite people living here to learn something about Ramadan. Then there are the Indian community who invites also all the Germans and all the people living here to celebrate Holi, for example, or to celebrate the Republic Day and such things. And I think this is very important to for the Germans also to learn something about the other nations, to better understand what they think and what might also be strange for the people who come here. For example, Carnival, which is very popular here in Bonn and the Cologne-Bonn area. And if you see the people on Carnival, it might be strange for someone who comes from India. And therefore, there is, for example, an international Carnival organization here in Bonn, initiated from the United Nations. And this is how things really work good. Because if you are celebrating together and if you just have a broader look on what is going on, not only within the German community, but also within the international community, that makes life much more livable.
I gather that, and I find that actually very nice. As an example, when my son went to school, or he's going to school currently, I was pleasantly taken aback when I mentioned to his school in the middle of the pandemic there is Diwali. There's a festival called Diwali, a festival of lights. We can't go to India, so can we have some lights in the class? I was very surprised. They took a whole day. They actually celebrated it. They got candles, allowed distribution of sweets, made my son very proud of being a half Indian, a person of Indian descent, so to say. So he acknowledged his Indian identity, I think, for the first time that day because the school became open. That was very interesting for me. And I found that a very interesting way of inclusion. And recently they did something on Ramadan. They asked the people who were there in the parents group if they had kept a fast or if the children were keeping a fast. I found I had not thought, honestly, that Germany would be that open. So we all have mental biases that we come with. So that was unconscious. I had not thought. So my question to you is: you've been living here long. There is East and West in terms of physicality. Now, when we talk of East and West over time, over the years, do you find there's a difference between what was there 10 years back and 10 years now in the coming together?
Yes, I think there definitely is because as one of your guests told you, the world is a village because we are able to travel, or many people are able to travel and to travel also far distances, which was very expensive and not usual 20 years ago. When I was a child, it was something very special that we were able to go to India once or twice a year. Nobody of my classmates made such journeys or holidays or whatever. And so I think times have changed indeed. And the digital possibilities we do have today are also very helpful to learn more about other cultures and to get into touch to people in other countries. It was not possible to just talk for an hour with people in Australia or India or New Zealand or the States or South America because it was much too expensive. And nowadays, via the internet, you can do video calls and everything with almost no costs. And this is a very big advantage for the young people today.
I totally agree there because I feel that with porous borders, digitalization, consumerism, actually, that is not such a good part, consumerism increasing. It's changed the very baseline of the East and the West. Because earlier there was this line, that's the East and that's the West, and they are like this. So it was they versus us. And there was an I, there was a they, and there was an us. So now it's a little more, in my, what I see is it's a little more porous, quite porous actually. But you've lived here. So you've viewed it coming from this level, right? Or this is what I see. Even in those 10, 12 years, I see it going like this. So I was curious. You've been here pretty much all your life. You've been brought up here. So, in your opinion, it has also been like this, or is just in the last few years?
No, it's not only in the last few years. I think it's a process which began, I would say, 30 years ago, when traveling became cheaper, when traveling became more popular, and especially here in Germany, most of the people, they can afford to go on a vacation at least once a year. And many of them go to other countries. Most of them go to European countries and spend their vacation over there. But also, this is also something special because when my mother was small, it was a very long journey to go to Italy, for example. Nowadays, you just buy a ticket, get on the plane, and you are there 2 hours later. So it's entirely different from what our parents have learned when they were young, and even different from what I've learned when I was young. Because in the 70s, 80s, there was not such a lot of traveling around. Nowadays, now our youngest son, he has just been to Spain for a basketball match to as a visitor, which would have been unthinkable for me in the same age. When I was 22, it was almost impossible to just even consider to go to a basketball or soccer or whatever match into another country because it was much too expensive and there were not so many possibilities to go there. Just imagine how many flights went from Germany to India in the 70s and 80s. And imagine how many flights there are today. In the 70s and 80s, there were flights from Frankfurt to Delhi, Mumbai. That's it. 70s and 80s. One flight a day from Frankfurt to Delhi and Bombay, as it was called in the 70s and 80s. Nowadays, there are daily flights from Frankfurt and Munich to Delhi, to Mumbai, to Kolkata, to Chennai, to Bangalore. And so you have so much more opportunities to go to India than 30, 40 years ago. And that's the same with so many other countries. You know, the possibilities to go to South America, to Africa, to Australia, to North America, and especially to Europe. There are so many flights to all the bigger cities in Europe, so that you can really travel much easier. And the people do travel much more than they did in the 70s and 80s when I was young.
And you would say that the opening up of physical borders in terms of traveling, which is per se also a big chunk, that contributes. So, in interaction, more mobility and more interaction increases the possibility of intercultural exchange.
Exactly. Traveling and of course digitalization is also one of the big points promoting the exchange between the cultures.
There's an interesting point. One of the experts in intercultural competence, they call it now cultural intelligence. So we used to have we do have the IQ, then there was the EQ, emotional intelligence, and there is nowadays cultural intelligence. So, because of globalization and porous borders and so on, very interesting for me. Some months back, when I just thought of the subject, discussed with experts in the US as well, the people who founded the concept. It was very interesting. They said that the students who travel from different parts and they come to the US, for example, from another country, from very far away, they try, even though they've come from that end of the another end of the world, they usually stay in their little islands. They comfort levels they sort of collect together in little sections. So they are not able to open up or integrate completely because they remain in there. That is where then it came up. Then when instead of just mobility, to add to the mobility, there needs to be little more training involved to open up mental borders as well. So they've crossed the physical borders. They need something more to also open up the mental borders. What do you think?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. That's exactly the thing happened in the last couple of years. And there are many students, for example, also going abroad to study for a couple of months or years in other countries. And so there are many students on the other side, there are many students coming to Germany to study over here. And for example, our Bonn University, they do have really a lot of international students and also of international professors. It's the same, I guess, in Hamburg, of course, and it's the same with the universities of applied sciences. And therefore, I think there's a much better understanding nowadays regarding other cultures and other nations and other religions than it was 20, 30 years ago.
But again, do you think that just having crossed borders is that enough? Because, like I mentioned, I had no thought about the subject till it was pointed out to me by an expert of cultural intelligence when they said, okay, people come, people stay there, and people stay in their own groups. So, yes, they know that there's that culture, and it still remains like there, though they might be in the same place. Birds of a feather flock together, that kind of scenario. So they remain in their own groups. They're not able to completely open up. So if there is no formal training, that's the new discovery of the day. That's what I understand, because I had not thought of that. I also thought global mobility, things are happening, but then I've realized also physical movement does not equate to mental opening of borders.
Well, I think here in Bonn it's different because here in Bonn the nations are really living together and also celebrating together. And of course there are Indian communities and Chinese communities and Japanese communities. For example, in Düsseldorf is a very strong Japanese community. But my experience here in Bonn is that the people from many nations are not only working together, they are also living in the same compounds. They are living in the same neighborhoods. They are celebrating together. They are going out together. And there are no groups just with Indians or just with Germans or just with people from the United States or from Brazil or wherever, but they are together. I made this experience when I went to the States in the 80s. It was always, they were friendly with each other, the different cultures, but all the people stayed with their own ethnical group. The only exception was the Hawaiian Islands. On the Hawaiian Islands, all the cultures were together. And this was really amazing to see how different the states in the United States are. Because in Hawaii, it was absolutely normal. It was usual that all the nations were living together, talking with each other, celebrating together. But in the bigger cities, New York, Washington, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they always had the ethnical groups. Just the people from one country are celebrating together and talking to each other and living together. And I think it's different in Bonn. I think Bonn is too small to have so many different ethnical groups because we are only 330 thousand inhabitants. So, of course, you meet each other many times. If you would go to the market square right now, where all the restaurants are, you will see that the people are sitting together from Africa, from South America, from Asia, from Europe, from North America. They are all sitting together, they are talking together, and there are international associations with many nations, with people from many nations being member in these associations, in sport clubs and everywhere, you will see really that they are living together and not separated from each other regarding their nationality.
That's interesting. That's actually very interesting. And what do you think could be the reason for this different kind of behavior there and there?
Because they know each other from the job. You know, they are working together, they are meeting each other on a daily basis, and they are living together also. Bonn is a small city compared to other big cities.
I This now brings me to another question, a little related somewhat. Even to this day, there's this definition of developed and developing. And sometimes I laugh because what would be your take on that? Because sometimes when I travel from one place to the other and they say this is developing, and I wonder, so which one is really developing? In what context is it developing? And in the other end, this is developed, but okay, in this place, yes, particularly in points one, two, three, but what about the others? Yet the label is this. What is your take on that?
You're exactly right. If you talk from developed or developing countries, it's always regarding the economy. And you have to take into account everything. And if you just, India was meant to be a developing country for many, many years from a European perspective. But if you have a closer look on the Indian history, the Indians were much more developed than the Europeans. If you go back 2000 years, for example. And it's the same with Egypt. It's the same with Mexico. It's the same with other countries from South America, from Africa. You cannot focus only on the economic situation. You have to take into account everything. And if you take into account everything, I think you cannot speak from developed and developing countries.
Thank you for saying that, because I've had that opinion, and sometimes the words are loosely used when people say that. Always want it to be defined as well, because I have a contrary opinion. Lovely. You consider yourself a global citizen?
Yes, I think so. I'm a global citizen because I love to travel, for example, and I do love to get into contact with people from other countries, no matter where, whether it's here in Bonn or someplace else. And we do have many friends from abroad, and we've just met friends from the States who are Jewish people, and they came here because my wife's grandmother's friend was a Jewish girl, and she had to leave Germany during the Nazi time. And my wife and this family, they are still in contact. And so we have been to Israel, for example, just a couple of months ago to visit them and to also get to know how they are living in Israel. We have been to a kibbutz. We have stayed together with them. We have celebrated Shabbat together with them. And this is something very, very important for me, for my wife, for our sons, for my parents. And so I think, yes, I am a global citizen. I could imagine to live also abroad. I could very well imagine to live in South America, for example. I could imagine to live in India. I could imagine to live in other countries as well. And I'm very happy that I have the opportunity to learn about these countries, to meet these people, to talk to these people, and also to learn from them what they are thinking, what they are doing, and what's important for them. For example, always when I'm in India, I'm doing Ayurvedic treatments. Ayurveda is so extraordinary because it helps you not only to get healthy, but to stay healthy. And that's entirely different from Western medicine. You go to see a doctor if you have a cold or if something is wrong. In India, you're doing Ayurveda to not get sick. And you're doing yoga to just keep you in a balance. And that's entirely different from the European thinking 20, 30 years ago. I think nowadays many people also in Germany are doing yoga and Ayurveda and taking care of themselves and regarding food and sports and everything. But it is something very special if you have the privilege to just learn such things and see such things, make experiences in other countries. And we do have many friends also in other parts of the world. One of my brothers is living in Switzerland. The other one is living in Australia. My father's family is living in Chennai. My parts of my mother's family, one cousin is living in Brazil. Other very good friends are living in the United States. And so it's really a global network of friends. And this is just fantastic.
It puts you in a position of privilege to be able to enjoy multiple influences. But also, you are able to do that because you have a curious mind, and that would make you a global citizen. You are comfortable in different skins, is what I understand. And because it's not that some people would get very comfortable in their own island. They, okay, now I'm good here. I can travel there, but I can't imagine living there. For example, somebody might say that. So there's a border. Okay, this is my island and this is my comfort level. So you are, what I understand, somebody who's able to go beyond comfort zones. Your comfort zones are not so fixated. Now that's nice. And since you live in that particular way, how would you define diversity and inclusion? Because you are there inside the ocean. No, there are people who dabble in the ocean externally, but you are right there inside the ocean. So, how would you define it? Diversity as well as inclusion.
Well, I think diversity is very important because diversity is helping us to just broaden our minds. If we wouldn't have diversity, we would be very narrow-minded, and those people who do not want to have anything to do with diversity, they are poor, and I'm feeling sad about them because they will never have the opportunity to just look around the corner and accept that there are different points of view and accept that there are also different religions, different cultures, different understandings. And therefore, I think diversity is very, very important. And so is inclusion, because, we are all living in municipalities, we are living in the same area. And if we exclude some of the people, it won't work. I think we have to be reliable to all the people we are living with. We do also have to accept and include those people who are maybe a bit different than we are ourselves or our families are. And inclusion is very important, not only regarding people who are maybe disabled or not so privileged as many people who are living in Europe, but inclusion means that you don't refuse to talk to and to live and to um, work with people who have other opinions than yourself.
True, totally agree there. And as a parting shot for the audience, what message would you like to leave the listeners with?
I think I do have the privilege to live in a very international city, and I never felt as a stranger, neither here in Germany nor in India. And I would like to live in a city where all the people who are living there feel the same, that they feel at home no matter where they come from, but that they feel at home where they decided to live or where they are living right now because of other circumstances. And I think this is very important, to be happy, to live a happy life, and to learn about others and to teach others how the own culture is, and to just let them participate with the culture you were brought up in.
Perfect. Thank you. That was actually a pleasure.
Thank you, Nino. Thank you very much.
And that, dear listeners, is Ashok Alexander Sridharan, an affable gentleman, a family man, and a gentle blend of the East and the West, is how I would describe him. He's a perfect example of cultures and values coming together in one person, a third culture individual who has not only grown up with diversity and inclusion at the dining table, but also taken it forward into the community of Bonn, where the old and the new coexist, the city which he put on the digital map of Germany. He brushes off his achievements lightly. I am a lawyer now. Politics is behind me, he says. A pity, I think. We could all do with a little bit more of him. Meanwhile, are you a third culture individual then do write into us. We are all ears. Thank you for listening to the series Between the East and the West. Do subscribe to the channels mentioned on the site in case, of course, you liked what you heard. I am Meenu Gupta, the host of the series, and I'll be looking forward to your comments. We love feedback. Thank you once again. Namaste and bye bye.